Hi, Ten, and welcome to the Week 2 lecture for music. This week's work is broken up into two categories. The first category is a revision of the texture work that we learnt about last week. And the second category is note flight. So we'll just go through some of the note flight basics, and I'll show you how to put some chords, melodies, and rhythms into that website. This slide here, I'm not going to go through it for very long, but it's basically just a summary of the work that we're doing this week, and it's in three sections. So we have a great starter section, which is basically just a warm-up of, of our work, and then we have a think harder section where I want you to use the content that we are learning about and insert some chords into note flight. And then we have a dig deeper task where this is like an optional extension task where if you're finding this work interesting or if you're getting through it really quickly and you just want to push yourself a little bit further, I encourage you to complete that dig deeper task and let me know how you go. If you do complete it, please put it on the Google Classroom and I'll have a look. Okay, let's move on and let's start our work on revising texture. Last week we talked about texture, meaning the layers of sound. Now, I just want to also reiterate that in a song where you have 5 instruments playing at the same time, each instrument is a layer, okay? And anything that you talk about, if you talk about anything to do with the layers of sound, it's texture. So this week, we're going to talk a little bit about this word arranging, and that's just why I have that picture of SpongeBob there. He's just arranging some things in some spices in a particular order, and that's kind of what we do with texture. When someone's written a song, what they do is they write lots of melodies and chords, and they give them to different instruments, and they arrange them in a certain order. The first thing that somebody arranges is structure, and basically you can see here I've got the structure of a song in order. So let's say the song starts with an intro and then moves into a verse, then a verse, chorus, and then finishes with an outro. Well, how does texture fit into that? Well, texture's got to do with how are the layers arranged in that song. So you can see in this imaginary song that I've made up in my mind, the intro only has one layer, and it's a piano. And then the second section has 2 layers. It has a piano and a singer. The chorus has 4 layers, a piano, a guitar, a drum kit, and a singer, and so does the chorus over here. So the chorus is kept consistent. The verse, it loses the piano, and then the outro is just a guitar and a drum kit. And if you can talk about, texture in that way, that's a really nice analysis of how texture is used in a song. So let's start talking about the purpose. What is the point of texture? Why would we talk about the layers of sound? And I'm going to break that answer up into 3 different categories. If you're listening to music, you can make some really good points on texture. You can make a critical statement why you like or even dislike a song. You can like or dislike the instrumental arrangement of the song. So if you heard a song that had the textural arrangement like this, the intro had 1 layer, the verse had 2 layers, the chorus had 4 layers, you could say, I didn't like that. It just kept increasing, and I kind of wanted it to just stay with a thinner texture. That's where texture is important when you're listening to music. What about when you're performing music? Well, every band should have a band leader, and that band leader is basically in charge of telling which instruments should be playing at certain parts of the song and which instruments should not be playing in other parts of the song. Because every song, if it's a good song, will have textural variety. It will have sections with just a couple of instruments, and then have some sections with lots of instruments, and that's going to create variety and keep the people listening to you performing interested, because this is development. So texture is important in performing, because you can organize with your band who should be playing and who shouldn't be playing, based on textural variety. If you write a song as well, the arrangement of instruments is really important, because you want to be able to tell people, look, in my song, I want the intro to have this many instruments, and then I want the chorus to have this many instruments, because that's going to create some variety, some textual variety. So hopefully you're seeing the purpose of texture and why we need to learn about it. So with all that in mind, let's just go back to the work we talked about last week. Texture. Texture is the layers that you can hear in a song. And layers are basically all the instruments that you can hear. Okay? However, technically, if you've got one instrument playing 3 notes at the same time, that's actually technically 3 sounds, or three layers. Now we could say the guitar is playing 3 layers, but that gets really confusing, because sometimes it's hard to hear if the guitar is playing 3 layers, 3 sounds, or 4 sounds, or 5 sounds at the same time. So it's better just to say, is the guitar playing 1 note at a time, or more than 1 note at a time? And that's where textural roles comes in. We have melody, which means 1 note played at a time. Chords mean more than 1 note played at a time. So if you had a guitar playing more than 1 note, more than 1 layer, technically at a time, you would just say it's 1 layer playing 3, or playing more than 1 note at a time. And that's just a nice way to describe the texture of a song. We also have rhythms, which is just, it's sort of similar to melody in a way, but you don't talk about pitch, where melody has 1 note played at a time with a combination of rhythm and pitch. But rhythm is just where you take that pitch away and you just talk about the long and short notes. So here's an example. Für Elise by Beethoven goes da 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 da. Okay, if I played the rhythm of that and by taking away the pitches, it would be this. Da, 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 da. Okay, cool. And that's basically the difference between melody and rhythm. And drone is just a long and sustained sound. And I'm not going to talk a whole lot about drone this term, because you'll learn it really quickly. It's just a long note, really easy to put into a song. What I do want you to start learning is how to make good analytical statements of texture. And we do that by, I guess, meeting a certain criteria. And this is the criteria here. If you want to talk about texture, if you want to analyze the texture of a song, the first thing you need to do is tell me, what section are you talking about? Analyze just a single section. So let's just imagine you're talking about, there's the spoilers, talking about just the introduction section. So I've got an introduction up here, okay? You can see that I've got a lead guitar and a rhythm guitar. So that's already 2 guitars. So I'll just write, in my introduction section, I've got a lead guitar, which just is, I don't know, I'll just actually put guitar 1. How about that? Guitar 1. And then I've also got a second guitar here. And then I've got a bass. And then I've got a drum kit. And that is fulfilling step number 2. I've listed all the layers, all the instruments that I can hear in a song. Then you need to identify the roles that each instrument is playing. So guitar 1, let's look at him. You can see it's got a combination of rhythm and pitch. It's got lots of short notes, and then it's also got, low notes and high notes, and it's only got one note at a time. So by definition, it's a melody, one note played at a time. Okay, so guitar 1 is playing a melody. Let's go to guitar number 2. Guitar 2 is playing more than one note at a time, but it's also got like a combination of long and short notes. It's got short notes and then it's got these rest stops. So I would say that is a chord, more than one note played at a time. And it's also got like a rhythm, a combination of long and short notes. So I'd say is playing chords with a rhythm, okay? The bass guitar is playing just this one note at a time. Now, the difference sometimes, well, I would say that's a chord, but just the root note of the chord. So where this rhythm guitar has 3 notes, it's just playing the bottom one. So the bass guitar is playing, let's say, root notes, which is technically chords, with a rhythm, because you can see it's playing these short notes at the same time as the rhythm guitar. Okay, the rhythm is exactly the same as the second guitar. The drums, as I said last week, always plays rhythm. It doesn't play chords, melodies, or drones. Okay, now this here is a really good explanation of the texture of a song, of the introduction section. And I can make a concluding statement. The texture of the introduction section is moderately thick, okay? And that is a really good textural analysis of this section. Now let's move on to this part of our, I guess, lecture. We're gonna learn about how to put different textural roles into Noteflight. This is basically the end product. I'm going to just go through step by step how to put this melody into the treble clef of Noteflight, these chords into the bass clef, and then this drum beat or how to put a drum kit into Noteflight and how to input these drum parts. Can you watch the video, please, and also pause it and copy what I'm doing? Go to the web page browser and type in noteflight.com. And if you have never signed up before, then sign up with your school email address, log in, and it'll bring you to a page just like this one. You can see I've got lots of untitled scores here, but to create a new one, just click Create at the top left-hand corner. It'll bring you to this page. We always want to start from a blank score sheet, so you can see that's already selected, and I'm going to click OK. Now we've come to a blank score. I'm going to first show you how to put notes in. Click on the stave where you want to put your notes. If you want to put them in the treble, click on the treble stave. If you want to put them in the bass, click on the bass stave. We'll stick with the treble stave for now. If I move my mouse up and down, you can see that a note head is appearing where my mouse is. So I want my first note to go here. Now, I would like to use a different symbol than that. So once you've selected your note and it's highlighted in orange, click on the note that you want. I want this one here. It's called an eighth note, also known as a quaver. And I want to put my next note right after it. So I want it to be here. Now, there's a quicker way to input notes, and that is by pressing the key R on your keyboard, R standing for repeat. What that will do is it will repeat the note that you have selected, it will repeat the pitch, and it will repeat the symbol. So I press R, and you can see that note and this note are exactly the same. However, I want it to be slightly higher than that. So while it's highlighted, I press up on the keypad, and you can see it's changed the pitch. I'm going to use that to put in my next set of notes. So I press R, and I press up, R, up, R, and I'm going to press down twice. Now this last note, I want it to be a different symbol. So once it's highlighted, I click on the symbol up here. Okay. Now I'm going to put my next set of notes in the next bar. Now I want that to be a quaver again, so click on there. And this time, I actually want to use a sharp. So I want it to be a D sharp. This is currently on a D note. So select the note you want to have a hashtag next to it or a sharp, and then click on sharp over here. Now, if these notes are not at the top of your screen, then what you can do is click on what they call a hamburger over here, and then you can see all of these different categories. Some of them are ticked, and that's because they are popping up at the top of the screen. Duration is there, score is here, and pitch is over here. But some of them are not ticked, and that's because they're not popping up there. If I click edit, edit now pops up, but I don't want edit there. So make sure you've got pitch up, and select the note that you want to put a hashtag next to, and then you can continue on with your song. Okay, now this next note, you can see this one and this one, they sound exactly the same. And that's because this note is still playing the sharp that I've selected in this at the beginning of the bar. And that's basically, it's just assuming that because you played the sharp this time, you want to play it this time as well. But on this note, I don't want to play the sharp, I want to play the white note on the keyboard. So I need to click on this. And you can hear how the pitch has changed. That's because this note is playing a black note on the keyboard, and this one is playing the white note. Now, I also want that to be a crotchet, and I want this note here to be my natural. And press R, press down, and I want this one to be a flat. Okay? And I want this one to be a crotchet. Okay, so then I've put in a melody, and let's have a listen to that. Cool, in the Hall of the Mountain King. Now I want to back it up with some chords in the bass clef. Chords are a little bit interesting. It's when you pile notes on top of each other. So I'll demonstrate. I'm going to make this first note an A in the bass, and I want it to be a semibreve. Now currently it's just the root of the chord, okay? Although it's part of a chord, it's not the full triad or the full chord that I want. So I'm going to click on that note. Make sure you click on it if you want to put a note on top of it, and move up and down, and you can see I have the option of adding a note in line with it to play at the same time, and I want it to play that E note right there. So let's have a listen. And you can hear how these two notes are playing at the same time. Now in this bar, I click on the bar that I want to put some notes in, and I want it to play a, let's say, a B, and I want it to be a minim. Now remember, if you want to put a note in above it, you need to click on the note, and then, click, and a note head will appear. I want it to be an F sharp, so I'm going to click on that F sharp, that F, and turn it into a sharp like that. Okay, this next set of notes, I want it to be a B flat, click on the note, and then an F natural this time. Okay, cool, and this is what my song should sound like with a combination of melody and chords. And you can see how when we put notes into Noteflight, we insert the note, and then we can edit it. A couple of other tricks that you need to be able to, and a couple of other things that you need to be able to do in Noteflight is add bars. Now in Noteflight, it's an American system, so they use American terms. In Australia, we call these bars, and you do that in Europe as well. But in America, they call them measures. So make sure that you've got measure selected in here, and if you have, it will pop up at the top of your screen. So if I want to add a measure, I just click the plus, add a measure after, and that's meaning it's going to add a measure at the end of the song. If I click on this one, it will delete any measures that are selected. Okay. Another thing is if you want to change this top part to be a bass clef, you can do so. If I click on this here, it's changed that symbol. If I click back on the treble clef, it's changed it back. If you want to change the tempo, if you want the song to be faster or slower, then you can change that option with tempo up the top. Once again, you need to make sure tempo is selected. This is a little bit clunky. You need to type in the tempo that you want. I want the song to be really fast, so I'm going to type in 180. 180 is a lot faster than 120, but you can see 120 has stayed in this next bar. So what you need to do, if you want, this is what it will sound like if I don't change it. And you can see the 120 note here has made this part a lot slower. So what you need to do is click on that and click delete, and then it disappears. That's nice and easy. Sometimes you might want to repeat certain bars. So if you click on the bar that you want to repeat, if you want, you click on start repeat here, and where you want it to finish the repeat, click on that bar and click end repeat. Once again, make sure that repeat is selected in this hamburger column, otherwise you won't see it up the top. Now if I click play, it'll repeat twice. Something else you might want to do in Noteflight is insert other instruments. So if I click on parts up here, that is, parts are just the instruments in the song. You can see I've only got a piano so far and both staves of the piano. If I click on add part, I can choose from these categories what instruments I want to put in. I want to put in a drum kit. So a drum kit is an unpitched percussion instrument, and I just want to stick to the standard drum kit, and most of the time that's what you want to do. Click OK, and it will pop up. Now with drums, if you play notes down here, you can hear what it sounds like. That's a bass drum, and that's also a bass drum, those bottom two there. Okay, cool. These ones below the stave, you're not going to use them very much. This one is specifically a hi-hat pedal, but you don't really need to know that. If I move up, that's a floor tom, that's another floor tom, that's another tom, that's a snare drum, and that's really important. That's another tom, that's another tom, and now we get to some cymbals. Once you get to this top line, they turn into X's. The X's mean it's using the cymbal parts or the metal parts of the drum kit. Now I want it to be a hi-hat, and I'm going to do my drum kit with quavers, my drum beat with quavers. So I've put in a hi-hat, and usually with drums, you always have hi-hats going through the whole song. So I'm just going to press R a whole bunch of times, and that will sound like it's just keeping the beat. Cool. Now with the drums, that's sounding really fast. So I want to get rid of that. I want to turn it back down to 120. And I press OK. Now remember, when I do that, you need to click on the next bar and delete that tempo marking. Okay, so with drum beat, this should sound a lot better now. Okay, now I want a bass drum to happen at the same time as this first hi-hat. So click on that hi-hat and then click where a bass drum is, and you can see that should now play at the same time. Cool. Now I want a snare to happen at the same time as this hi-hat, so I'm going to put this in here. Okay, and I'm just going to copy this phrase. So bass drum, click on that hi-hat, click on that snare drum. Okay, cool. Let's have a listen. Cool. That's okay. I might put in some extra notes just to make it sound even cooler. Now, one thing that you can do to make your arrangement a lot quicker is use that R key. So click on the notes that you want to repeat. Now, I want this whole drum beat to repeat in this bar here. So what I do is I can click on the bar and you can see it's all selected. If I press on R on the keyboard, it stands for repeat, and it will repeat that whole part that is selected. And now that drum beat is in the second bar. Now let's have a listen. Oh, I'll start from the beginning. There we go. Cool. That's the basics of Noteflight. The last thing that you will need to do is export your MP3 and PDF. So what you do is, if you want to save your work, you click on the cloud here that has the arrow going upwards because it's sending it up into the cloud. If you want to download it onto your computer, click on the arrow going downwards. You have a whole bunch of options here. The ones that you're going to stick to are Full Score PDF and MP3 audio. So I'm going to click on Full Score PDF, click Save, and you can see that it's popped up here. What you're going to do this term is upload this onto the Google Classroom, and that's how I will check your work. That's the basics of Noteflight. Can you please post to me any questions that you may have? I will post up some videos if you'd like of demonstrations of other features, but in essence, that is the basics of Noteflight. I don't think we will venture much further from these features. Okay, so this is the conclusion of this week's lecture. If you prefer to work with a checklist, I've just made this slide. You don't have to use it, but it's just a nice summary of what you need to be doing. You've made it to the end of the lecture, so can you please type in any questions that you have into the exit slip and have that done by 12 p.m. on Tuesday. You should have, in the video, done the Hall of the Mountain King arrangement into Noteflight, and maybe some of that task should have hopefully given you some questions to type into the exit slip. I'll make a tutorial video and post it up on Wednesday. And once you've seen that, move on to the quiz questions and complete the rest of these tasks. They are also in the quiz. Okay, cool. See you next week.